Shalom and welcome to a very special episode of Torah to the People. I'm Rabbi Jeff Dreifus, and we have two very special guests with us today. Sally Rosenberg, who of course needs no introduction here at Temple Israel, master teacher, head of our conversion program with Judy Bierman, the mikvah lady, Our Lady of the Mikvah, and so much more. Sally, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.
And all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, Rabbi Lindsey Danziger, who is Director of Campaigns for the Religious Action Center, who in the past, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, was the senior organizer on the state level for the RAC and many other roles at the RAC over the years, but now is in charge of the entire Reform Movement's campaign for the World Zionist Congress elections, which are happening now. And Lindsey, you're here today to talk about that and why this election is so important for Reform Jews and for our community. So Lindsey, Rabbi Danziger, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And you left out the most important part of my biography, which is that I have a deep connection to Temple Israel in Memphis. And I got married there. It's definitely one of my synagogue homes. And of course, Sally was my mikvah lady. So, we go way back. And it's just such an honor to be talking with you all, who I feel so connected to.
Well, we're so honored that you're here. And we should also mention that your life partner, is, of course, Michael Danziger, who was my head basketball coach for the running rabbis before either of us were rabbis. Michael.
That's his main credential, by the way, former running rabbis basketball coach. So, yeah.
It's at the top of his LinkedIn.
Important to put that in there.
Ziggy.
Yes, of course. And my amazing father-in-law, Rabbi Harry Danziger, is what connects me most to Memphis. So, yeah.
And his lovely wife, Jeannie, of course.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this election and what's at stake here, Lindsey. But actually, first, I want to know how you came to be in charge for our entire movement. What led you to want to take on this responsibility?
Yes. So I will share something that I don't tell everyone. I am a proud first-time voter in the World Zionist Congress election.
Wow.
I didn't really know about it before. So I think a lot of people who say, what is this? Why have I never heard about it? You're in good company. It's one of my colleagues calls it the most important election you probably never heard of. So I have been working at the RAC for 8 years, really working to organize our congregations and our clergy around social justice issues. I'm a really deep believer that what changes the world starts in, church basements and synagogue social halls, and that we in the organized faith community really have a lot of power if we're willing to tap into it and live out our values in the public square. So after October 7th, I was working on one of the most exciting campaigns I've ever worked on. I was working on an abortion ballot measure that we won in Ohio. And I couldn't think about anything but Israel and how I wanted us to really be using our organized power as the Reformed Jewish community to show up for our values in Israel. So when I learned that the World Zionist Congress was coming up, that it was happening, I was really excited to dive in and get involved. And everything I learned about it just has taught me how important it is for us as Reformed Jews to be at the table, how much is at stake for our children. And I'll just share, it's really personal for me. Our daughter is named Aviva. We named her after our favorite city, Tel Aviv. And we want her to be so proud of her name and of the city she's named after. And we want her to have a home in Israel, to be considered Jewish, and to really be proud of Israel and feel connected to it. And so that's one of the things that I'm fighting for in this campaign.
Thank you. I want to bring in Sally, who is one, in addition to all the other things we mentioned, Sally, along with Hannah Chanin, they are co-captains for this election at Temple Israel. And Sally, why is this election so important to you?
Well, I'm a proud Zionist, and I love Israel. And I am for a pluralistic Israel, an Israel where Reform Jews, you can practice your Judaism any way you want to practice your Judaism. and you're not treated as a second-class citizen. I want my rabbi here, Rabbi Jeff Dreifus, to be able to be a rabbi, considered a rabbi in the land of Israel. And as I tell people, it really troubles me. It's a shanda. It's a shame that the minister from Bellevue Baptist down the road, which has 50,000 members, can marry somebody in the land of Israel, but Rabbi Dreifus cannot, and you cannot, because it wouldn't be considered a legal marriage. And that just has to stop. It makes me angry that a lot of dollars go to supporting Orthodox synagogues and causes in the land of Israel, but none of those go towards supporting Reform ones. And our sister synagogue in Shoham can attest to that. Rabbi Sfanya can attest to that. Also, equality for women in Israel as far as religiously. And I'm for a democratic Israel. I am not for a theocratic Israel. I know that Ben-Gurion had to make some hard choices in the beginning, but here we are many, many years later. And so we have hard choices to make too. And I think we are on the right side of history when we choose these things. So those are some of the reasons. I have 1,000 more. I'm not going to keep going.
We'll get into.
Well, Sally, I love what you shared. And I would also add that one of those choices was to keep the World Zionist Congress around. Like, it would have made sense to get rid of it once it achieved its original purpose, having a Jewish homeland, having a Jewish state. Mm-hmm. But actually, the founders of Israel that you talked about having made some hard choices baked this election into the fabric of their democracy because they wanted each of us on this Zoom, everyone listening to this podcast, to be at the table to counter the alternate vision of Israel that you're talking about. So it really is integral to our Zionism and to the democracy of Israel to have the World Zionist Congress election and to vote in it from the diaspora.
So, Rabbi Lindsey, I think one of the things Sally just mentioned, which is that she's a Zionist and she loves Israel, and that's true for all of us. And maybe because this is such a hot topic in our country today, we can talk about what the definition of Zionism is. But even though we're Zionists, we love Israel, we acknowledge that the current state of Israel is not perfect. There's definitely things that we want to change about it. Can you define what, maybe in your words, or if there's some formal definition you like to refer to, of what is Zionism? And then what is the World Zionist Congress?
Before you do, I want to say that you can love your country and disagree with your government. Right?
I mean, how many Americans, right?
So I think that people can't just say Zionism, you are a pro-Netanyahu. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But what I'm saying is you can hold both of those things. There are so many things you can hold in your heart at the same time. And so before you go, I just wanted to add that you can do that because we have to do that here in America. And I can't think of one nation where you don't have to do that isn't democratic, I should say. So in some nations that are not democratic, you better not hold more than one thing in your heart at the same time. So.
Yes, and at the center of this campaign is love, our love for Israel, our desire for Israel to be strong and secure for our kids and our grandkids. And when you love something, you fight for it. So that's what we're doing as the Reform movement, for sure. Thank you, Sally. And the small question that you posed to me was, what is Zionism, right? So I think a pretty good definition of Zionism is just the belief and the desire for a Jewish state in our ancestral homeland of Israel, a place where Jews can be safe, first and foremost, but also where Jews can thrive and create and be pioneers. There's a different definition of being a chalutz, a pioneer in every generation. I believe that our Reform rabbis in Israel are the chalutzim of our generation, defining a new Judaism, a new authentic Jewish spirituality from that really holds the Israeli public in this challenging moment. And an important part of Zionism is being able to live in Jewish space and on Jewish time, and in a place where our holidays are the national holidays, and where on Shabbat, the ATM wishes you Shabbat Shalom. So there are a lot of beautiful parts of Zionism. And as the Reform movement, our Zionism is rooted in our love for Israel and our mandate to fight for Israel's future, to keep it democratic, to keep it pluralistic, and to fight for our Halutzim, our Israeli Reform movement, our rabbis who are out there fighting for their ability to be rabbis, their ability to have buildings for their synagogues and to serve the public.
I think that's great. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
I think that also that the Jewish people have a right, just like any other people, because some people think of Judaism as just this religion, but maybe it's a religion last and a people first. But I would say that the right for the Jewish people to have self-determination in their ancestral homeland, self-determination is really important. We wouldn't deny that to any other people in the world. We don't. So we no longer are guests until we're not.
Yeah, I would say that being a Southern Jew is actually what taught me that Judaism is a people, not just a religion. Being a Jacob's camp is what taught me that Judaism is a people, not just a religion. How much we really need each other, how much we need to find each other and hold each other and be together to honor our traditions and to create Jewish space. And I think that we, as Southern Jews, really live out that vision of coming together to be a real people, not just a religion.
I think so too. And I think when on October 7th we saw these terrible videos coming out of Israel, every Jew in the world felt like this was an attack on them. Mm-hmm. And that's peoplehood. That's what it feels like to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's at the core not only of what it means to be an American Jew or an Israeli Jew or a Ukrainian Jew, but what it means to be a Jew. Mm-hmm. And that's what's at stake here, is fighting for the future of how the Jewish state is going to treat the Jewish people. But I want to step back and go a little bit broader, a little bit more high level, and ask Rabbi Lindsey, you said a moment ago that the founders of the State of Israel baked into the fabric of this country this election and this Congress. We as American Jews, I often say, well, I love Israel, or I am critical of Israel, but somehow we're in relationship with Israel, but I'm an American Jew, and I can give money and I can go visit, but I don't fight in the army and I can't vote. So how do I, as an American Jew, have a role in shaping the Jewish state? And I think that's key to this election. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah. And look, that line of thinking, I'll be honest, has resonated with me before, especially in this past year and a half, where it's really hard to judge the decisions Israel makes because they're fighting for their survival. But this explicitly is our place. This is our lane. The World Zionist Congress happens every 5 years. And the reason it has persisted since 1897 is because for Israel to be successful, and all the things we were just talking about, peoplehood, shared responsibility, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, all of Israel is responsible for one another. For that to really be not just a vision, but a reality, there needs to be a way for all Jews, not just the ones who live in Israel, to have a voice, to have a vote, and to have a say in this amazingly successful project of Jewish statehood in the modern state of Israel. And that is the World Zionist Congress. So every 5 years, any Jewish organization can put together a slate of people who we believe are excellent exemplars of our values, of our Reform Zionism, and a platform stating our views and our beliefs. And it's amazing that we have so many Memphians on our World Zionist Congress platform this time around, including you, Rabbi Dreifus. And so anyone who wants to can run a slate and a platform. They try to get as many votes as possible for their slate and platform. And the more votes we get, the more of our delegates we get to send to the World Zionist Congress. And at the Congress, resolutions are passed, policy positions are passed. And it's important. It makes a big statement of what are the priorities of the Jewish world right now. Which Jews are showing up to the table, and which type of Jews should be counted in Israel. But it goes beyond that, because our votes also determine leadership positions in some really big national institutions in Israel. And that's where the teeth and the power and the money behind this election comes in. So if we get enough votes, we get to have board seats and leadership positions in organizations in Israel that determine important policies about who's considered Jewish, where we should be investing in the land of Israel. Should we be expanding and building new settlements in the West Bank? Or should we be making sure that those who were evacuated from their homes in the north, who were bombed by Hezbollah, in the periphery, the Gaza envelope, whose houses were destroyed on October 7th, should we be rebuilding those communities and getting those people home and settled? And that's our priority. That's what we're running on.
Can I ask you just some basics? When is the actual Congress and where?
Good question.
And after that, we have a certain number of delegates from our synagogue that will go and vote at this Congress. And then after that, these dollars get distributed, and these organizations that you talk about, these dollars get distributed to whom and which organizations?
And I'm going to add on to that, even that great question. Can you give us like a couple human stories of how this plays out for real people?
Mm-hmm. So the Congress is October 28th to 30th. In Jerusalem. It's really a beautiful statement that it used to meet in Basel, Switzerland, when we didn't have a Jewish state, and now Jews from all over the world, all different types of Jews, come together to talk about our priorities of the Jewish people every 5 years in Jerusalem, in Zion, the capital of the Jewish people, our eternal homeland. So that's where the Congress is. And the money, it goes to the orgs it goes to. So the most important thing to remember is the more votes, the more delegates we send, and the more control we get over $5 billion, over $5 billion over the 5 years that the election happens. So that's where, so you asked about the Congress versus the organization. The Congress is just those few short days, but the work that goes on for the next 5 years is determined by our votes in this election. So those organizations are the World Zionist Organization, Kakal, Karen Kayemet Israel, which is like the Jewish National Fund of Israel. If you know, like the little blue tzedakah box, put a penny in a pushki, plant a tree in Israel. But it's way more than that. And the Jewish Agency for Israel. So the Jewish Agency for Israel really has to do with peoplehood, Jewish peoplehood. About stories, Kakal, that's the one that really makes those decisions. It has almost $1 billion a year budget, and it makes decisions about where in Israel we invest. And as we know, land in Israel and where you invest, where you build, is really a big statement with huge implications. A story I would share about that is that it's really speaking to what I was saying before. These are the actual decisions that are coming to the table of the Kakal board about how much do we take our money and invest in ultra-Orthodox yeshivot? How much do we invest in expanding and building settlements? Or are we going to get these people home? Who it's really, there's only a certain set amount of money. It's a values judgment. Are we going to get these people who were evacuated from their homes home, rebuild the schools, rebuild the medical clinics, rebuild the homes that were destroyed on October 7th and in the months following? And in recent days, a budget was passed in Israel that prioritized the former over the latter. It really doubled down on giving stipends to ultra-Orthodox yeshivot, to people who do not serve in the army, but in this time when Israelis are called up for months and months of reserve duty. Their businesses are suffering, their families are suffering, they're exhausted. The budget that was just passed in Israel went instead to appease the ultra-Orthodox and make sure that they are not called upon to serve and to contribute, talking about joint responsibility, talking about all of Israel is responsible for one another. So that's really one of the things that we are fighting for in this Congress, to make sure that the budget does not go to serving ultra-Orthodox pet projects and helping their ability to not serve in national service or the army, but rather to support those who are serving, who are contributing to the Israeli economy, who are making the future of a safe and secure Israel possible. One other thing I would add about the different organizations, the Jewish Agency for Israel is the organization that decides a few really important things. They control Aliyah, so who is eligible under the law of return. For me, this is really impactful because Israel isn't like a plan B. It's a dream that one day I could move to Israel, that I could be an Israeli citizen, that if my children chose to serve in the IDF, we send them to Jewish day school. They think Israel is the best thing in the world. And my mom had a Reform conversion. So if I were to want to send my children, if my children were to want to become Israeli one day and the wrong people get elected in the World Zionist Congress, it is fully within their power to decide that myself and my children are not eligible to become Israelis, that Israel is not our homeland anymore, which would be devastating to so many in our Reform Jewish community, where we don't just accept our interfaith families, but we value them, and we know that they bring such an important part of our community, such important Zionists come from interfaith families. And the people who are running against in this election are really trying to shut out Reform Jews, and especially our interfaith families, like a real war on our interfaith families, from being part of the future of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And that's something we can't accept.
Okay, can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
So obviously, I've been part of this conversion program here at Temple Israel for over 15 years, and that those people can make Aliyah is very important to me, very important to me. But what you just said, can they just decide that? Because Ben Gurion said, if one grandparent's Jewish, you're Jewish. You're considered. You're Jewish. You can make Aliyah. You can become an Israeli citizen. You may not be considered a Jew, but you can become an Israeli citizen if just one of your grandparents is Jewish. So, I mean, the idea that they would have the power to change that very basic thing that has stood from the beginning is terrifying. But also, on the other hand, how can these really Haredi ultra-Orthodox even vote when number 6, they have to agree to the Jerusalem program, and number 6 on the Jerusalem program since the last World Zionist Congress 5 years ago has changed. And number 6 says that you have to agree that everybody living in Israel should be part of the IDF or national service, no matter what. So when they vote, do they just lie and check yes? Or...
Let me just jump in here and give a little context for those who haven't voted yet. And if you haven't and you're listening, we'll drop a link in the show notes for how to vote and where to vote. But in order to vote in this election, you have to attest that you support what's called the Jerusalem program. And there's 6 criteria, 6 things that you're attesting to. And this last one, will you read that again, Sally? That everyone who votes has to say they support this.
I feel like 1 through 5, everyone supports who is a Jew. Number 6 is new. It says, encouraging recruitment and service in the Israel Defense Forces and the security forces, and strengthening them as the protective force of the Jewish people living in Zion, as well as encouraging full national service for anyone exempted in law from service in the IDF.
So we know that the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox parties in this coalition, Shas and United Torah Judaism, are trying very hard to enshrine a permanent exemption from having to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces into law. They are basically holding the rest of the government hostage and saying they are going to withdraw from this government if that legislation isn't advanced. And so this is an issue that Haredi Jews, especially in Israel, but ostensibly also in North America, don't want their Haredi brethren, their ultra-Orthodox brethren in Israel to have to serve. And so it seems like by attesting to this statement, they are...
Which they have to in order to vote.
Right. They are contradicting their publicly held views.
I cannot speak to what goes through the mind of individual voters when they vote. I would not accuse a different Jew of being untruthful, but I can see what has played out on the internet and public spheres. And their campaign materials, actually, one of the organizations that got one of the most votes in the last Congress, Eretz HaKodesh, has a campaign video where they specifically say that one of the things that Reform Jews are trying to enforce, that they are against, is yeshiva students serving in the army, and that's something that they are going to fight back against. So they say it in their own words. They put it out there in their campaign videos. And tradition, there's a real kind of like a machloket, a disagreement in the ultra-Orthodox world if they even belong at this Zionist table. And whether the secular state of Israel is kosher to engage with versus a true, in their words, like a Torah society based not in democracy but theocracy. So there is this real kind of some of the Gedolim, the big rabbis in the ultra-Orthodox world, have a disagreement over whether I think they agree about whether they are Zionist or not, but whether or not it's okay to be at this table because so much money and power and potential to fund their pet projects and their special interests is at play. So it's a really important dynamic. And traditionally, they had not entered this arena. Last election was the very first time that they made the decision to engage with the Zionist federations and the national institutions, which until that time, the ultra-Orthodox had desisted from because it was not considered kosher in their communities. But because of all that's at stake, all the money, all the opportunities to fund their community, they are now running a really hard campaign. They're well organized. They're well disciplined. When your ultra-Orthodox rabbi says vote, you vote. You listen. You do what they say. I mean, we respect our Reform rabbis very much too, but it's a different community dynamic. And they have pledged to get 100,000 votes this time, which is a huge number. So we need to match them vote for vote, because what they say publicly in their campaign ads is they're not just fighting for their own interests, their own vision, their own community, which every Jew is entitled to fight for their own community's vision, but they're actually coming for us. They have called us as Reform and conservative Jews Amalek, the eternal enemy of the Jewish people who needs to be blotted out in every generation, which is pretty cutting, pretty harsh. And they call us not Jewish. They call us illegitimate. They say our rabbis aren't rabbis. And their goal is to defund our Reform movement in Israel, and to make sure that we, our children, especially our interfaith families, especially our Jews by choice, have no home in Israel and no seat at this international Jewish table. One more thing I'll add that is under the purview of the Jewish Agency is our amazing shlichim who get sent abroad, whether to our communities. I don't know, does Memphis have like a community shaliach, someone who serves at the Federation?
At the JCC.
Yes.
Yes, and they bring so much to our communities as well as our summer camps. I get to serve on faculty with a lot of our Memphis rabbis at Jacob's Camp over the summer, and I've gotten to see how much our Israeli counselors and campers bring to the community at Jewish summer camp. That's where our young people form their connections with Israel. We could sit them down in a classroom and lecture them all we want, but when their counselor is an Israeli who just came from serving in Gaza, you go to college with a different idea of what it means to be an Israeli than someone who didn't have that experience. And what they have the power to do if they get enough seats on the Jewish Agency Board is say only Orthodox Israelis are going to be sent abroad. That is the image of Israel that we want the world to see. And we know that means that Jacob's Camp would not have Israeli emissaries, that our Memphis JCC wouldn't have emissaries who would be able to come into our Reform synagogues and relate to our children and to our communities and our young people, creating those vital people-to-people connections. So that's a huge thing that's at stake here as well.
I think it's really important to note that when Reform Jews vote for the third item on the slate, vote Reform, so it's pretty clear, that they don't have to check any of their values at the door. They don't have to pretend anything. They don't have to pretend that number 6 in the Jerusalem program doesn't exist. They can just vote with their full heart and full conscience. And I think that is wonderful, and that's really Jewish.
That's true.
Amen.
So let's just spend the last little while we have you, Rabbi Lindsey, talking about, first of all, what are some of the other things at stake? What does the Reform slate stand for? And what if we don't get the votes that represent us, what the next 5 years and really even beyond might look like for Reform Jews, both here and in Israel?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important. I talked about the budget that was just passed in Israel, also seeing in recent days kind of a indifference to hostage families that we're seeing come out of the Knesset in Israel, seeing the firing of the Shin Bet chief, some real kind of some judicial reforms, some anti-democratic creep. And like you said, we don't vote in the Knesset. We don't have the power, nor should we, to have a seat at that table as diaspora Jews, but this is really our opportunity to fight for Israeli democracy. So that's one of the big things at stake that we're running on is the real commitment that Israel remains democratic, that we support the democratic foundations that from the outset were always supposed to be part of the state of Israel. Another thing that we're fighting for and that we're prioritizing is our hostages, really keeping them at the forefront, making sure that we don't forget about the 59 people who were kidnapped and who have been living in hell for over a year and a half. And that we don't prioritize other goals over bringing them home and keeping them at the forefront of everything we're fighting for as Jews who do feel, like you said so beautifully, Rabbi Jeff, like responsible for one another, that we should continue to feel responsible for those 59 souls, those 59 families who are suffering so badly right now. A big thing that we're fighting for, like we've talked a lot about, is this idea of who's considered Jewish, who's eligible to make Aliyah, who's eligible to be an Israeli emissary. And also making sure that we fight for those who are marginalized in Israeli society, women, LGBTQ plus Israelis. And a big umbrella thing that undergirds everything I've said so far is our Israeli reform movement. That's what sets us as the vote reform slate apart, really, from any other, in my opinion, slate that is in the center left. is we have this robust infrastructure, boots on the ground, over 90 Israeli rabbis. I think over 120 have been ordained through our Israeli program, 50-something synagogues throughout Israel who are at the forefront, fighting in the courts for justice, fighting in the streets, protesting for democracy, and really holding spiritually those who are suffering and fighting to bring our hostages home. I don't know if either of you, maybe you have, Rabbi Jeff, been to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv since October 7th and seen our Israeli reform movement holding a Havdalot. They hold a Havdalah service every Saturday night. Not for Reform Jews, for the Israeli public, for the Israelis who are taking to the streets to support the hostage families. And that's really the role they're playing. And they receive something like a quarter to a third of their funding directly from our votes in the World Zionist Congress. So if we don't get enough votes, we would see a real reduction in their power to be our representatives, like I said before, our pioneers on the ground in Israel doing that holy work.
The last piece about the Israeli reform movement is one that I don't think we talk about enough. And that's one of the reasons I'm most passionate about the reform slate in this election. 60% roughly of Israeli Jews are secular. They celebrate Jewish holidays because, like you said, in Israel, the public holidays are the Jewish holidays. They learn a little bit of Torah in school, but largely most secular people, Judaism and Jewish religious practice, Jewish ritual or spiritual practice is not part of their life because they just think it's not for them. That they think that it's the only way to be Jewish is to be Orthodox. They think that the rabbis who they know don't have a type of Judaism, don't have a Torah that relates to the life they want to live. And for me, as somebody who cares about the spiritual welfare of all the Jewish people, the fact that 60% of Jews in the Jewish state don't feel like they're spiritually connected to Judaism, I think that's probably an oversimplification, but it's largely true. I think the reform movement in Israel is the answer to that. The reform movement and reform Judaism can show them how they can still be modern, believe in science, can relate to the modern world, but still have Judaism be an enriching and meaningful part of their life. And I think that it's actually a big shame on account of our North American reform movement that we don't invest more in their future and in their success. And this is a way that we can get more funding, more support. And Israeli reform rabbis have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I mean, they do not make a living wage as rabbis. And that is a shame. And even
while the Orthodox rabbis have their salary paid for by the government.
Exactly. And it is a huge, huge problem, but also a huge opportunity. And that is also at stake in this election.
I've been witness to that, having been to Shoham, having had Shabbat services there at the Reform Synagogue with Rabbi Svanya, having spoken to these Israelis who found this Judaism. And I think the common denominator was like, we didn't know Judaism could be like this. This is wonderful. So you're right. I think it is a balm, and it will, in Israel, they say, the air is Jewish. Okay, it is. But what does that really mean, right? And, I mean, yes, there's a mezuzah on the door of the hotel and the post office. But quite honestly, if you want to find some spiritual, enlightenment and you cannot find it through Orthodoxy, I think you're right. That is the reform movement is the balm for all of that. It's the cure.
One of my URJ beloved colleagues, Rabbi Orly Moss, who leads a lot of our youth programming in Israel, talks about that, how when she was a young person, she came to the United States as a shlicha, one of these young Israeli emissaries, and she found Reform Judaism, and that made her go back to Israel and become a Reform rabbi. And now there's a different reality. When she was growing up, she couldn't find that organic spirituality where women have a seat at the table and can learn Torah and lead and sing and pray. She couldn't find that growing up, and now the reality has shifted as our Reform movement has grown exponentially, so that a young woman growing up in Israel can see that she can be a rabbi and can find that seat at the table religiously and spiritually. And I absolutely agree with you, Jeff. Like, they are just getting started. They bring so much richness to everything they do. And that's one of my whys also, like our duty as American Reform Jews to show up for them. Over the past year and a half, everyone has been saying, what can I do for you? My Israeli friends, my Israeli colleagues. Now this is something concrete we can do for them after they have been carrying this enormous burden over the past year and a half since October 7th. This is our chance to show up for them by voting.
So how about the how-tos?
How do we vote? How do we vote?
Great question.
Why don't we ask Sally? Because I know Sally's one of the most enthusiastic captains in the whole country. And
I don't know about that, but I will tell you this.
I will second that.
Thank you. We here at Temple, we have been, how do you say, canvassing every program that we have here, every Shabbat we have here, and we're sort of the hard sell. Again, I mean, you're probably not leaving our table till you voted right then. So
I love it in like a kind Southern way, but like sure it gets done.
Bless your heart. But you can vote online with a QR code. There's some sticky things with that, but it's not too sticky. Just don't copy and paste your PIN number when they send it to you. Just write it out, please. And other than that, that's it. Or you can vote on paper. We have, I think Rabbi Jeff has 100 or more.
Yeah, we just sent in yesterday over 100 ballots.
Right. We have tons of paper ballots. We have paper ballots galore here. And sometimes it's actually less than 5 minutes to fill out a paper ballot. So 5 minutes, $5, 5 billion. I say paper ballot, 2 minutes, $5, 5 billion. So, so we're doing it all sorts of ways. We have a big program coming up, the Tempo Fest, and we will be there in mass to get votes for that. So you explain what that is, Rabbi, better than I.
Well, Tempo Fest is Temple Israel Music Program and Outreach. That's what our amazing music director, Emily Groff-Heilborn, runs. And
wait.
Who's also on our slate?
She's also on our slate.
I was going to say, isn't she on our slate? Yes.
She is. And Emily puts on, this is the second or third year?
Yes.
Second year?
I think it's second, but I might be wrong.
Whatever it is going to be awesome. Our teen band, our adult band, we have really spectacular music lined up for this entire afternoon. There, last year was an open bar, which was a lot of fun.
Tell them how many people came.
So you won't be thirsty if you come. And we have a lot of community groups that set up tables. There's also activities for the kids. We brought our dog. It's a lot of fun.
Too.
So I hope if you're listening and you weren't planning on coming to Tempo Fest, it will be, check your email because the date is just, we'll drop a link in the show notes to it. Also, it's in April. It's a Sunday in April.
Yeah.
Coming up in the next few weeks.
After Pesach, right after Pesach.
After Pesach. So one of those, there's 2 Sundays in April after Pesach, I think. It's one of those. Mm-hmm. But last year we had, I want to say, between 750 and 800 people there. This year we're hoping for more.
That's a lot of votes.
But we send out every week in your email, your Temple email, and there's a way to vote on our website. Just look in there. But also we have lieutenants. Mm-hmm. So Hannah Chanin and Sally are captains, but we also have lieutenants who are reaching out to their friends in various age demographics, trying to get out the vote. If you're listening right now, I'm going to ask you to pause, take out your earbud, or pull if you're driving. Be safe, but
Pull over.
pull over, and you can vote right now. There's a link in the show notes. But also, when you're done voting, text your friends, send your friends a link. And it does cost $5. And Lindsey, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the $5 goes to, because it doesn't go to us. It would be nice if it did. But it does cost $5. That is a very small price to pay for democracy and Jewish pluralism and all the things we talked about a few minutes ago.
Absolutely. So it's a great time to be asking me what that $5 is all about. We're recording this on Shabbat, the Kudei, and this is one of the Torah portions where they talk about the half shekel contribution to build the Mishkan. This thing that every Jew, this is a theme of everything we've been talking about. All Jews are responsible for building our shared people, for building our shared Jewish society. Everyone contributes a modest fee. So this is our opportunity to also just contribute our modest bit to building the Jewish people. It's just an administrative fee. Here in the United States, we pay taxes, and that goes to administer a free and fair election and to combat voter fraud. This is the same thing. Our $5 goes to pay a contractor to put on this election, to administer our amazing website, and to combat voter fraud. So it's really, if you're worried about what am I donating to, it's not even a donation. It's just an administrative fee.
So that $5 goes to Votum, right?
It goes to Votum. Yes, our contractor.
That's the company administering basically the fair election.
And to the Zionist Federation who pays them. And you can put up to 5 individuals on one credit card.
Nice.
Which is new.
And every paper ballot, which has your credit card information on it or an attached check, goes in its own envelope, so your information is safe. Its own separate envelope. So
yes, and make sure you fill out the whole ballot so you don't risk, just like here in our U.S. elections, so you don't risk your vote being disqualified.
And also bubble it in like the SAT all the way.
All the way. I love it. That's spoken like a true teacher. Yeah.
Well, Rabbi Lindsey, Sally, thank you so much for joining.
Thank y'all. We're going to get all the votes.
I am so inspired by your team in Memphis, who is just doing the most, bringing so much passion, so much creativity to this. And I think it goes beyond just getting votes. You're bringing Jewish joy to your Zionism right now, which has been a hard thing to do for the past year and a half. So I'm just so grateful to everyone at Temple Israel in Memphis, who's really centering this important campaign and bringing your holy chutzpah behind it. And you're doing awesome. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Can I make one last suggestion? I put on, where is it? This sticker every day that says I voted reform, and it has a QR code on it. And I kid you not, if I come across any Jews during the day who haven't voted, I make them vote right then.
I love that.
With that QR code. So
what would we do?
Sally, I love it.
If you vote, I'll give you a sticker. We will give you a sticker. Wear it. Make everybody else vote.
Multiply your vote. You're such an inspiration. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is really one of the most important things you can do for the Jewish people in the next 5 years. So we really hope you'll take this opportunity to do it. Tell your friends. And we hope you'll join us next time on Torah to the People. Thanks for being here. Take care.
Thank you.